Hey friends, welcome to the Connected Mom podcast, where we have real conversations, and we hope that these conversations help you to connect more deeply with God, more empathetically with your fellow moms, and more intentionally with your child. And you know what? We are in a new series of podcasts about friendship, because I think that as moms, you for sure need a community of friends around you in the journey. And today I'm super excited because I have one of my very dearest friends on with me. In fact, she's actually recording from my kitchen and I'm in my office. So if the kitchen's a mess, blame me, don't blame her. Anyway, my dear friend Judy Dunagan is on with me today. And before I talk about our friendship, I just kind of want to introduce Judy. For years, Judy was a women's ministry director. We met years ago in a church that my husband was pastoring, and she helped me start women's ministries in that church. And then our lives, we lived in two different countries, but we always stayed in touch. And then for a while, Judy was the acquisitions editor at Moody, and she had a long run doing that. And now she has left that position, but she has just signed a double contract to write 2 more books. She's written the book, The Loudest Roar. And beyond all of that, Judy is just a treasure to me. And so we want to talk a little bit about our friendship and what we've learned through the years in the journey of long-term friendship and how that might help you. So welcome, Judy.
Thank you, friend. It's so much fun to be here, Becky.
Yeah, well, it's so much fun to have you. And it's so funny that you're in my kitchen and I'm in my office, but here we are. Anyway, and so, hey, Judy, one of the things that I think you and I have both discovered, we became friends years ago. I think Carrie was 2, maybe Kelly was, your youngest was 15 months or something like that.
It was in 1993. We had just moved back from Brazil and we met at the church. Yeah. I think Kelly was turning 2. So they were little.
Okay. They were little. So yeah. And I remember us like meeting at Wegmans for coffee, and the kids would kind of toddle around and we would meet for coffee and pray. And, a fun story is our daughter, Bethany. I remember her babysitting for you and couldn't get Kelly to sleep and laid down with her and she fell asleep and you had to wake her up when you got home. So
yeah, Bethany was our girl's favorite babysitter. So her falling asleep near my daughter's crib was fine with me.
Well,
they loved
she
her.
Loved them and still loves them. And now our kids are all mamas in their own rights. But, our friendship through the years has really had to be intentional, right? Because I write and speak and podcast and that kind of stuff. I have 4 kids and a ton of grandkids. You have been an acquisitions editor. You write and speak. You have grandkids and kids. And, at different points in our friendship, Judy, we've lived in different areas. Right now, you at least live half the time close to me. I really am a proponent of you coming back full time. But, how do you think intentionality has helped our friendship?
Well, I just remember it being such a gift when we first met because, like I said, we had been overseas. And so I had my second baby there. And when I came back, I was just so hungry for friendship and plugging into a church. And you just welcomed me. And we were only together about 18 months because then we moved to China. But I know it's crazy, but we stayed close. I ended up in Michigan and I brought you to that church to speak at our women's retreat. And then God brought us both to Colorado just a year apart. And so it's so much fun now. Now that I'm retired, we have more time to get together for lunch and together to pray. And it's just been such a gift, as you and I always talk about. It's so rare to have such a long friendship, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And I think one of the things that has helped us, because I was thinking back, like, how have we stayed so close when at different seasons we've lived in different places? Because like even for a while I was living up in Denver and you were down here, but I think we've always been intentional, like, hey, you want to pray together or let's get together for lunch. We do have the great story about showing up at 2 different California pizza kitchens for lunch.
One in Denver and one in Colorado Springs. We're both like, where is she? And we're
I
like
know,
an
right?
hour apart.
And what was funny is we were texting like, I'm here, where are you? It took us a while to figure that out. But, I think a lot of times busyness can really hinder friendship. What do you think about that? I know for me, there was this season where Steve and I were traveling around the world. We did like 65 countries in 4 years. That was nuts. And I really missed spending significant time with you. And I think busyness can prevent us from being intentional with friends. What do you think?
Of course, yeah. And I know there was a season, I think, when you were in California, where we were in Michigan, we kind of lost touch. But when we both moved here, we knew we needed each other. Becky, I think the one way that we have been so intentional in staying in touch is through prayer, praying for each other. It went way back when we met in upstate New York in the early 90s. We started praying for our toddlers and our little ones because both of us were kind of anxious moms. And then I moved across the world and you moved. We lost touch for a little while, but as soon as we came back, you and I pray almost every week. We do it early in the morning. And now we're praying for our grandchildren. Do you remember praying for our kids that God would have them marry Christians? And they all did. And, this many years later, now we're praying for our grandkids. And it's such a gift. And that's how we've really been intentional. And I think how we have stayed so close.
Yeah, I think so too, Judy. And also, I think in our prayer times, we've learned the beauty of being vulnerable with each other because you can pray like really spiritualized prayers. Maybe that's not the right word, but kind of superficial prayers. But we learned early on that we really needed each other because life is hard. I am a cancer survivor. You've gone through stuff. Our kids have gone through different battles and trials throughout their lives. And we learned as moms, but also as friends, that we really had to be vulnerable with each other because we needed each other in the journey. And I think vulnerability is something that really has to be a part of friendship. What do you think about that?
I think it's key. And that's one thing I love about you is I know I can tell you anything. And I can be vulnerable if I deal with anxiety or insecurities. You and I are a lot alike in different ways, and we kind of laugh about it. But I know we've so encouraged each other with that, where we can just be so real. And I think a key about vulnerability is to know that your friend is going to keep it in confidence and not tell anyone else.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that you can trust them with your deepest prayer requests or whatever you're going through.
Yeah, I think that's key too, Judy, because you and I have had that commitment to each other, and I saw a card the other day. Actually, I was looking for a card for you. I didn't get this one. I got another one, but it said something about we are lifetime friends because we know too much about each other. And I
That's
thought,
that.
that's
True.
probably true.
Yeah.
We do know a lot about each other. But I think learning to keep confidences in friendship is really key to the safety of feeling vulnerable. But you've got to have people around you in your journey, and especially in motherhood, where you can be honest and say, hey, I'm really struggling with anxiety today. There's a lot to feel anxious about as a mother, or I'm really struggling in my marriage, or I really am struggling with this child. I don't know what to do. I'm at my wit's end, because your dearest friends will allow you to be vulnerable. They won't dump a ton of advice on you unless you have that real depth of friendship, and then they might give you some advice, but they won't judge you. Like I have been very vulnerable with you in different seasons of my life, and I have never felt like you've been like, oh, Becky, you shouldn't feel that way or whatever. I mean, we don't need judgment in our friendships. We need safety, right?
Mm-hmm. So true. Yes. And what I love about you is you remember when I bring something up that I'm struggling with or a prayer request, you always circle back. Either it might be through a text, I might have a sick grandchild with 103 temperature. And we do that a lot. It's like, hey, pray for my grandbaby. She's got a high temperature. And you always circle back and say, how's she doing? Is she okay now? And I do the same. I hope for you too.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And another thing I love about vulnerability is we're both authors and speakers and ministry leaders, that there's no competition. We're each other's cheerleader. And I think with women, a lot of times we can kind of get jealous or feel competitive. And I've never felt that with you. And it's such a sign of a genuine, true friendship that you cheer each other on, even if you're doing something similar that you want to do well at.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking about that this morning, actually, Judy. I was reading in Matthew 20 where Jesus tells the parable about the workers that he sends into the field. And I was thinking about how comparison and competition shouldn't enter friendships. And I knew we were going to have this conversation today. And I'm thinking, I love that about my friendship with Judy. I've never felt like I am in competition with you. We just are each other's cheerleader. I celebrate when you get a speaking engagement. I celebrate when you sign book contracts. I celebrate when you coach clients on writing. And I feel the same from you. And I do think with women, sometimes what happens in the friendship is competition comes in, even with kids. Sometimes, I don't know, have you seen that? Because you're a well-seasoned women's ministry leader, and I feel like sometimes with moms it's like, well, my kid really deserves the key role in this play, or my kid is so smart. And I mean, there can be competition there, but that doesn't help.
Right. I remember that when our girls were younger. Not so much, I mean, just in their school community and at the soccer games and dance recitals, that there is a little bit of that. And it's something you need to be really careful about, and not to be hard on your child and wanting them to excel because you want them to be like that child who's got the lead in the play. It can be a battle, and I'm grateful we're through that.
Yeah. So comparison and competition can be a battle. And I think it is particularly hard on mothers. It's interesting in that Matthew 20 chapter, because right after Jesus tells the story about the workers in the field, the mother of James and John comes to Jesus and she's promoting her two sons. And, honestly, Judy, I can relate to her. I think my kids are the best in everything. You think your kids are the best in everything. And we get that about each other, right? So here's this mom coming to Jesus saying, hey, in your kingdom, can my two kids sit on your right hand and your left hand? And isn't that so like us as moms? We just want to promote our kids. And it's kind of like, arguing for your kid to, I don't know, make a better soccer team or be the star in the show or whatever. You have these moms that brag, my kid just got into Yale, and maybe your kid is just struggling to finish high school. And competition and all of that competing doesn't help friendship. And I love that in my friendship with you, Judy, I've never felt that. Let's talk about just sometimes I feel like, and I'm looking for the right words for this, but sometimes you and I, because of the depth of our friendship, we actually kind of counsel each other, when we feel like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I fell on concrete this summer and broke my nose and damaged some front teeth. So I had to have oral surgery on my three front teeth. And I don't like medical procedures, and they were going to kind of put me under. And the night before, I couldn't sleep because of the pain and just being fearful, and I was exhausted. And I had decided that I was going to cancel and reschedule. And I remember calling you to pray over me. I think you might have even called me to check on me because you knew my surgery was early that morning. And I said, oh, I had an awful night. I couldn't sleep. And I said, I'm going to call them and cancel. And you so gently but firmly, really like a sweet sister or a best friend, you said, Judy, I love this. You said, Judy, I really think you shouldn't cancel because you haven't been able to sleep all week with the pain. They're going to put you under, and you can have this great sleep and you can finally rest. And that doubt and I was going to cancel, it just went away. And I hung up and I'm like, I'm not canceling. Becky said I shouldn't. And a really fun story is while I was under and they're bringing me back about 45 minutes later, I was dreaming that I was skiing in the mountains and I was really good at it.
That.
And I'm just skiing and it's so peaceful. And ironically, I got injured at a ski resort, but not skiing, just walking. And I was like in the dream, or while they were starting to wake me up. So you start to, have some cognitive, something's going on. I'm like, I'm really a good skier. And then I woke up and my surgery was over. But I give that all to you. That fun dream and get it. I had to get it done because if you don't start fixing your teeth after that kind of injury, it does major damage. You got to get it done within a week. So it was some advice. It's just a great example that you were gentle. I mean, you would understood if I said, no, I can't go, but you really nudged me. And I know my husband, Rick, I got off the phone. I go, okay, I'm sticking with the surgery. Becky said I should. And he appreciated it too. So that's a fun story.
Yeah, well, thanks. And there have been times where you've nudged me. I mean, there were times where I was ready to quit writing and you were like, Becky, don't do that. And just like pick, after a rejection letter or whatever. And you just kind of gently encourage me, you got to keep on going. But I think that's why girlfriends are so important. I saw this funny TikTok clip the other day. I'm not even on TikTok, but I saw it on YouTube. And it's these two old ladies. They're like 87 and 88, and they've been best friends for years, And they were talking about how now they live next door to each other and they get together every day and they laugh. And I was thinking about friendship because the statistics now from the Mayo Clinic say that you actually live longer if you have good friends. So Judy, I think you and I are going to live into our 90s. I'm not sure, and we'll probably still be laughing together.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll live near each other still.
Right. We should buy townhouses next door to each other or sit out in rocking chairs in the nursing home. But, I just think, there are these different elements of friendship. There's being intentional and coming back to prayer. Prayer is key because if there's any journey you should not do alone, it's the journey of motherhood. I mean, you need your friends with you in it. And even if you're married, our husbands, they are precious to both of us. And we both adore our husbands. We pray for our husbands, but we still need our girlfriends, because there are certain things that if I processed as long with Steve about I don't know, issues like I do with you, I think I would lose him halfway through. He just can't process quite that many words. Whereas with girlfriends, you can, and I think, even there have been body image issues that you and I have talked about. And there have been a whole host of, the fear and anxiety issues. And our husbands adore us, but maybe they can't relate quite as much to those issues. And so we need our girlfriends. I think another element that comes into our friendship is just the whole idea of affirming each other. I feel like people in general are pretty lonely, and I feel like they need affirmation, and when we get together, like recently you just told me you signed a deal for a 2 contract book, or you're getting ready to, and I'm super excited for you, because I knew years ago when we had our toddlers and we were praying together, in my mind, I knew that someday Judy was going to write a book on prayer for moms, and I felt like God showed me that. And I have been able to say that to you through the years. And now I'm watching that come true. And I want to affirm you in that because you're just an amazing communicator. What part do you feel affirmation plays within the realm of friendship? I mean, not just our friendship, but your other friends as well. How does affirmation help in friendship?
Well, words of affirmation is one of the love languages from the book, The Five Love Languages. Moody published that book. And I think it's such a key. And I think it's often so missed. And I think everyone appreciates it. And it has to be genuine and to build each other up. And Jesus modeled that as he walked this groaning earth. He affirmed Mary of Bethany and the choices she was making. And so you've always done that for me. And I might go back to counsel that part and also affirmation, because this story came back to me. When I met you, you had been in Africa before I met you, and your oldest Bethany was deathly ill there. You thought you could lose her, and you could tell a little bit more about that. Well, that was right. You're telling me that story and how God brought her through and how you had to press into the Lord, cast your anxiety on him. You gave me some tools. And then not long after that, after I met you, 18 months later, we're moving to Beijing, China. And our youngest, Kelly, at the time was 3 and was deathly ill within the year. And I'll tell you, your words of affirmation, like you can do this, God's going to protect your babies, but also just the whole trusting piece and just knowing that he loved my daughter more than I did and that I needed to trust him, even if his choice wasn't healing for her. And it's so interesting that that continues to happen in deep friendships like ours, where you speak over each other, counsel or affirmation or challenges that'll come back at different times. And I just love that. And that's God's heart for friendships. When a high priestly prayer, when he prayed for the disciples in John 17, one of the things he said more than once is that they would be one he was talking to God the Father, as you and I are one, may they be one. And it's such a key for him for unity and to be one in Christ. And I think you and I are, and I'm so grateful for it. Yeah.
I am too. I forgot about all that, Judy. Yeah. Our daughter was 18 months and we almost lost her because she got a deathly virus. And what's interesting is I don't even remember saying that over you, Judy. I remember praying my heart out for you when you left for China. And I remember praying for Kelly when she was so sick, because we stayed in touch even when you were in China. But sometimes you say things to your friends and you don't even remember what you've said, but that there's this whole concept in Proverbs where Solomon says that if you refresh others, you yourself will receive refreshment, and I have received the refreshment from you. There have been times where I, have been so concerned for a grandbaby. I remember when one of the twins a few years ago, I think he had 107 fever and I was panicked, and you spoke over me, God's got him. And we prayed together on the phone and God did have him and brought the fever down. And it was a crazy high fever, but he's okay. And, you can remember the refreshing words of your friends, but again, it comes back to being intentional. You've got to create the space in your life amidst, running your kids to dance, running them to soccer, swimming, gymnastics, whatever else you do, even, your commitments in church and your job, maybe you're handling, you have to commit to prioritizing your friends. I just recently, actually, Steve and I were on vacation in Costa Rica, and I got this text from Judy saying, "When are you coming home?" And I got home and we went out to lunch the next day, because we needed to connect. And I don't want to let that part of my life go, because Judy's too precious to me, as are some of my other friends. But if you could give one parting word to our moms that are listening, what would you say to them, Judy, about friendship?
Well, I love the picture of Jesus washing the feet of the disciples and the sacrifice he made in that, even washing Judas's feet, knowing he was going to betray him in a matter of hours, and his servant heart. And the Lord's really shown me that in friendships and with my children and grandchildren, to have a heart of serving. And you've washed my feet over and over. And I love, too, the fun that we've had. We haven't had time to talk about that. We have some hilarious stories. We laugh hard. We kind of we tease each other, but the depth of prayer is really the key. And so I moved a lot, as you have, and it's hard to get into community with a really close friend, but just those listeners who are like, how did this happen? It was the Lord brought us together. I mean, you were just there at my church when I moved from Brazil, and we connected to get my kids in school. And God knew then, I mean, we were going to be friends for decades. And it's been such a gift because I have a lot of friends, but it's hard to stay so connected like we have with all of our moves. And that's what I really appreciate about our friendship. So all the things we've talked about, being intentional, but also if you're lonely and you've moved and you're trying to find a friend, just cry out to the Lord and say, will you bring me a close friend, a kindred spirit, like-minded? And I believe he'll be faithful and do that, or he'll show you, he'll help you be brave, and you meet someone in a Bible study or a community group in your church, and you just boldly ask, hey, let's go have lunch. Can I have coffee with you? And pray for each other, and it will develop. And the Lord is faithful in that because it's important to him.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great place to end this podcast, because I think a lot of times people think, well, I'm new to this area, nobody's reaching out to me. And can I just encourage you to do what Judy said? First of all, pray. Ask the Lord for a kindred spirit friend. Second of all, you take initiative and reach out and just find somebody who you think you might be able to be friends with. Take them out to coffee. Just be a good listener in that coffee time. Ask them their story. Find out what you can pray for them, and just trust God that the friendship will develop slowly. But some of the best friends do develop slowly, but they last a lifetime, like with Judy and I. And what a treasure it has been to me to have this lifelong friend. And, you know, each gift, each friend in your life is a treasure. They each bring something different to your life. So value them and treasure them and call them precious. Hey, this is a great place for us to end. Again, I want to encourage you moms, keep listening in. Next week, we're going to continue our conversations on the Connected Mom about friendship. I'll have another friend on, and we'll be talking about friendship and how you can develop them. And we're going to be talking about some different things like even boundaries, and what does that look like in friendship? And what does it look like when you have to apologize in friendship? I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that you'll share it with your friends, because our friends are a treasure, and maybe listening to a podcast together on friendship will spur some ideas in your heart and mind. And you can say, hey, let's start praying together, or let's start just really supporting each other, or washing each other with praise and affirmation. Like Judy talked about washing each other's feet. You don't have to actually wash each other's feet. You could go for pedicures together, but you can wash your
Pay for a pedicure.
Right. You can go and get pedicures together. Anyway, I'm glad you joined us today. Be blessed. And my prayer for you is that you can continue to connect deeply with God and with your fellow moms and with your child.